I'm the director of the Humanities Center, and it's my utmost pleasure today to introduce to you today's speaker, Marc W. Kruman, who is somebody that actually needs no introduction. I would I would bet my mortgage that he is one of the most highly respected Penn State University citizen. Everybody I have ever mentioned his name to say, I know Marc, a great guy, and that's an achievement in this very competitive place. And an acknowledgement of that, the university promoted him last year, 2020, to the rank of Distinguished Service Professor. It's a new distinction which the university has created, perhaps mainly for him, I'm not sure, but he deserves it mightily. He is the founding director of the Center for the Study of Citizenship and professor of history here at Wayne. He has taught American history at Wayne State University since 1975, which is over 50 years ago.
Yes. I was only 12 when I started.
I can believe that. I mean, and I'm sure most people would think the same. I was an old man at that time, but still I recognize what that achievement. Kruman is the author of 2 books, one entitled Authority and Liberty, State Constitution Making in Revolutionary America, which was published in 1997, and Parties and Politics in North Carolina, 1836 through 1865, published in 1983. And he's co-editor of a book entitled Meaning of Citizenship, published in 2015. His co-author is Richard Marc from the English department. He has been awarded, that is Marc Kruman, has been awarded an Andrew Mellon Faculty Fellowship in the Humanities at Harvard University and a National Endowment for the Humanities Research Fellowship. In 1999, he was a Fulbright Senior Lecturer at the University of Rome. At Wayne State, he has received the President's Award for Excellence in Teaching, the Board of Governors Faculty Recognition Award twice, and the Board of Governors Distinguished Faculty Fellowship. He didn't list the fact that he has been a supporter of the Humanities Center for a long time. He has served twice as a resident scholar in our facility, and he has been a member of at least 2 working groups funded by the Humanities Center. And so I am delighted to welcome to the virtual podium Professor Marc Kruman, who will talk to us today on citizenship for health. Welcome.
Thank you, Walter. I appreciate it. I've noticed a number of friends that Kennedy has admitted to our nice-sized room. I want to thank you all for coming. Thank Walter and Kennedy, who's managed the whole process so beautifully, but the transition from in-person to virtual, based on my time in the audiences of other brown bags, and certainly with my experience, has been fairly seamless, though I must confess that as much as I actually kind of enjoy Zoom meetings, the idea of talking to my screen is a little bit less than appealing, and I would love to be in the same room on the second floor of Fab with Walter and with all of you to see your smiling faces, to be able to shake your hands, give you all a hug, and hope that we will be able to do that soon indeed. Uh, Today, I'm going to talk about a project of the Center for the Study of Citizenship, an entity, as Walter points out, that I direct at Wayne State. And it's a project that's not mine by any means. I play a role, I'm making the presentation, but if you look at my screen, can you all see my screen? Oh, good.
Yes.
Um, the list of people who are effectively co-investigators and co-authors on reports and on today's presentation. They range from wonderful faculty colleagues across campus, like Joanne Sobeck, Associate Dean for Research in the School of Social Work, Michael Thrall, Associate Professor in Social Work, Malcolm Cutchin, who recently left the university to take a leadership position at a university in Eastern Washington, but was former professor of healthcare sciences. These are the sorts of people. I'm scratching the surface here because we've had 4 fantastic interns from the Masters of Social Work program, staff members like Parada Jordan from iBio and the medical school, and Amy Bloom, formerly social studies consultant at Oakland Schools, the intermediate school district. They include also Hope Village community members, people like the committee chair, Stephanie Johnson Cobb, Victor Bonds, Arlisa Hurd, Julie Rice, Lisa Robinson, Del Stubblefield, a group of people who began um, as collaborators and who have become both deep collaborators, but also warm friends. I had an opportunity, I noticed that Rick Smith in Social Work School has joined us this afternoon, and Rick and I presented at the Society for Community Research and Action a couple of summers ago. And on our panel, I think I can say without insulting you, Rick, that both you and I were eclipsed by presentations of community members, Julie Rice and Lisa Robinson. So this has been a wonderfully talented team, and I think I'm engaging in a Walter Edwards-like introduction of them. You have rubbed off on me, Walter, after all of these wonderful years of friendship. The Citizenship for Health program, I've always been dreadful with PowerPoint. It's a collaboration between the Center for the Study of Citizenship, faculty and staff and students at Wayne State, and residents in a 107 block neighborhood that the residents call Hope Village. Hope is capitalized and takes its name from the anchor institution in the neighborhood, Focus Hope. The overarching goal of the program has been to improve the health and well-being of the residents of Hope Village. To attain that objective, we have sought to enhance the civic capacity of Hope Village and to deepen habits of civic engagement regarding public health. In so doing, the project recognizes that ordinary citizens possess expertise in their own lives and in their deep knowledge of their own communities. Our project does not seek to minimize the expertise of public health officials, health educators, or nonprofit community health organizations. Rather, we argue that citizens possess complementary expertise and need to have a prominent seat at the public health table. When we think of public health, we tend to think about those formal entities of government and non-governmental organizations. And what we as a team have contended, and I think shown, is that the public has a crucial role to play in shaping public health. The city of Detroit has had a lot of faced an incredible number of challenges, as all of you know, that stretch even further back than my 46 years at Wayne State University. And we know that there has been often a broad disengagement from civic life. It is captured by the fact that in the mayoral election of 2017, only 17% of the eligible voters came out to vote in that election. So the challenges are there, and we believe that the opportunities are there as well. What we've done in the program has been to implement a model of civic engagement in health through a process of deliberative democracy. It's a process in which citizens name problem, frame the discussion of the problem, deliberate about the problem, decide what to do about the problem, assess the resources that they have to address the problem, and then to act on it. Whoops, told you I wasn't so great at it. This is a model that we've drawn on from the Charles F. Kettering Foundation and the nonprofit civics organization, Everyday Democracy. Two representatives of the center participated in a year-long exchange supported by the Kettering Foundation with the goal of exploring democratic practices and civic capacity building in community settings. And what we did was we brought questions of naming the issues. We asked members of the community to answer a series of questions about their health. Why are we focusing on health? Partly because the Office of the Vice President for Research was taken by a commitment that the center has had to addressing issues of citizenship and health that goes back for a good part of a decade. And the the vice president's office gave us $10,000 to award to the community that we were working with to address the public health problem that they had focused on and decided to act on. And so we also had funding for some of the staff and support for things like in order to get members of the community to participate in the brief survey, we paid each of them $5, which in a community which has a greater rate of poverty than the average Detroit neighborhood, small gift cards and, in this case, cash, were a crucial inducement and a recognition of the fact that they were participating in our study and that their time merited compensation. We especially, professors Sobek and former Wayne State professor Joanne Smith Darden developed the survey. We tested out the survey at a great program that's run throughout the city called a Wash and Learn. You only allow clean ideas. No, my bad jokes go over even worse on Zoom. The Wash and Learn is actually held at a laundromat, and we were able to ask customers at the laundromat series of questions, revise the survey, and what you see on the screen right now is exactly what we asked people. What is health to you? What are the most important health issues that the community faces? We gave people plenty of time to talk. We asked them quite directly, what would you spend $10,000 on to solve the problem? And we offered an opportunity to them to follow up as well. The two teams from our larger group listened to the answers of some 67 people who were surveyed and distilled the results of the survey, providing summaries of each of the anonymized survey results. So we began by asking, in effect, members of the community to tell us what they thought the major issues that the community was facing in the realm of public health. The idea of then getting people together to talk about this reflected our commitment to bringing neighbors together to deliberate and act on their self identified health needs. It was, and continues to be a project that aims to improve the quality of life through community connectivity, which we know, and I can provide footnotes at some point for anyone who would like to see them, is an important predictor of health outcomes. Um, uh, we were talking right before the beginning of the session. I was unable to present on this less developed topic last year because my mother, at age 94, was dying right on the cusp of COVID. And I mentioned mom because she was an active volunteer up until the week before she died. So living alone and engaged in volunteering and collaborating with others, she in many ways embodied the ways in which social connectivity and doing for others has a way of helping to build, I think, important levels of personal resilience. Certainly, when I attended the biweekly meetings of the Citizenship for Health team, they were always asking about my mother's well-being for years, and she was a topic of conversation. But the of I, point of talking about my mother is simply I love talking about my mother, but that the the goal here was to develop what Malcolm Cutchin eloquently called habits of civic engagement, where habits that had atrophied over decades could be, in effect, um, reestablished, reinvigorated. Uh, Back in 2016, when we met with a number of community organizations, they said people in Detroit do not feel like anyone listens to them, that no one hears, that no one pays attention, that they could not exercise power in any way. And in this, in giving people a voice, in taking an issue like public health and saying it's not simply about you becoming educated, but that you can educate the experts, that you have something to say. And it's striking how immediately they recognize that. And in the months after the survey, we organized a deliberative session. Nearly 50 community members came to a meeting at Focus Hope, and the meeting was moderated by Parada Jordan in our medical school in iBio and Amy Bloom, both of whom had been at the Kettering Foundation. and engaged in organized, very carefully facilitated discussions, small roundtables, limited time to participate. Um, it gave people both a voice, but also an opportunity to listen carefully to their neighbors. And the conversation went, even though it was carefully moderated, we didn't finish the job and came back to meet again 2 weeks later in the same place. Follow-up meeting had fewer people, but the people who attended, and all of this, and I'll show you some of um, um, the documents that members of the community and Amy and Parada were working with. Um, the, they had distilled the survey into an issue guide, and out of the issue guide, there were 3 streams that involved education, safety, and access to healthcare. As a result of the discussion, though, they didn't choose any of those 3. In the deliberation, they had come to the conclusion that the most important thing that was missing was communication. These were people who were active in their community in one way or another, and what they found was really quite striking. They were discovering health opportunities, healthcare services that they didn't know existed. And as a consequence, they spent a chunk of the time of deliberation learning about the availability of these resources in their community. And as a consequence of that learning, they decided that what was missing in the community was a vibrant community health network. Now, this was nothing that public health officials would have thought of. We certainly thought that they might develop an exciting program that built on their very robust farmers market, something about nutrition or exercise or addressing diabetes or cardiovascular disease, but they did none of that. And I would argue what we saw there was, in effect, democracy in action. The community members had drawn on their own experience and listening to their neighbors to give them a sense that, yes, they were limited to $10,000. It is important to point out that they might have preferred raising all of the derelict buildings in the neighborhood if they'd had unlimited funds. $10,000 wouldn't take you very far there. But with that, they came to a conclusion about communication. And this was the early summer of 2018. In the fall, we began to meet with a group of volunteers. We had been paying all participants up to that point, but thereafter, we had a gathering of community volunteers, graduate students, faculty, staff, who met at Oakwood Manor senior living home, and they let us use their community room for free. I've always argued that they did that so that they could recruit me. But one of the residents of Oakwood Village Manor, Del Stubblefield, in fact, was able to host us, and we met there for most of 2 years, and to highlight the ongoing nature of the project, I get a reminder every Tuesday night at 5 o'clock that I'm supposed to be at a meeting in Hope Village. The process, and I'm going to try to be, I'm looking at my watch, try to be brief about it, but in the fall, the project was led primarily by Wayne State faculty. The meetings, trying to figure out how communication might be developed effectively, was again led by the faculty. And you could almost feel by the end of the fall, and I think it's important to remember that, again, these are community volunteers who worked a full day and would meet in the evening. So progress invariably was slow, but what we, wrong direction, Mark, there. What we were doing here was figuring out what kinds of communication existed in the neighborhood, sought to identify resources beyond the $10,000 that were there, like the human resources that were available. And yet, with faculty leading the way, you could almost feel the energy shrinking. And I think that we began to recognize on the Wayne State side that things had to change, and what happened in the beginning of 2019 was that we began to cede authority over the meetings, something we probably should have done months earlier, but despite the Kettering Foundation's great work, most of what they had done had always been in the come back there, had been in the three. Can you see my cursor on there, Kennedy? Can you see my cursor?
Yes, I can see your cursor.
I just want to make sure that folks can see what.
Sorry, I was on mute.
That's okay. The Kettering Foundation had focused on making decisions. They'd actually had relatively little experience with the actual organization of action and the collective learning that would take place. So we were in relatively unguided territory, but what emerged in early 2019, when I started writing a report on this for the Kettering Foundation, I was reading all of the agendas for the meetings and all of the meeting minutes, and it became members of the community who created the agenda. Members of the community who asked Wayne State people to participate in the meeting or just attend the meeting and offer expert advice. It wasn't that the community members were excluding us in any way, but they were assuming the role of lead partners. And after these, what amounted to months of deliberation, once the community members took the leadership role, you could feel the revival of that energy and I would simply go to the meetings and smile. I'd eat some pizza, but mostly smiling because this had been the goal. This was about community empowerment, and the community decided to create this hub that would be based on a website. One of the community members wrote a draft for an RFP for a website developer, which we must have spent 2 months. We met every other week for an hour and a half, discussing, revising, and ultimately sharing with potential web developers. We brought in marketing people who volunteered to come talk to the group. And over time, they were confident that they were on the right path and planned to bring the idea of a digital hub combined with there we go. The idea was a website, a mural, electronic and physical signage, community health ambassadors. Focus Hope had great success with what they used to call street team leaders, but these were people who were members of the community who engaged the community, and a community health navigator, or a community more commonly known as community health worker, who would coordinate efforts with the goal of using the Parkman branch of the public library as the home for the operation. We dragged things on long enough that the Parkman branch will not be able to host it, but there will be hosting with our new partner, the Hope Village Revitalization, which is Community Development Corporation. The members of the leadership team wanted the community's approval, but they thought of the community, they had their own political theory of the community. Everyone who lived there, the neighborhood service organization that housed homeless men and provided services throughout the city for homeless men. One of their apartment buildings was in Hope Village. Members of the leadership team insisted that, contrary to small R Republican political theory, even people who were transient in the community needed to have a voice. They wanted returning citizens in the community to have a voice. They had a very capacious understanding of community. At the same time, they realized that when they presented the work of the committee, which had been happening for over a year, that they would be facing the likelihood that people were not going to be responsive instantly to what was presented and would likely send us back for further discussion and planning. At that point, they basically said, we already have enough democracy. We were following the charge of the community. We implemented the goals of the community. And what we're going to do is tell the community what we're planning to do and get their advice on how best to do it, rather than getting their approval on the whole communication hub. We had tremendous, about 25, 30 people showed up for a luncheon at neighborhood church. It was the goal, the plan of action was enthusiastically embraced. And over the last year and a half, the committee has been building out the navigation hub. We're now going to be a page on Hope Village Revitalization CDC, have a Facebook page. We were able to get pro bono support for developing the web communication device, which has given members of the community more money to invest in community health ambassadors and in signage, both physical and electronic. And I know that the community members have an RFP for a mural in the neighborhood. It's small. Someone in public health might say, as one did to me, all they're doing is building another website. But all they were doing was, in fact, engaging the community in decisions about their own well-being as a community and the public's health. The consequence of this, I think, should not be in any way underestimated, because I think that this holds out a prospect for rethinking the direction of public health. Instead of it being a one-way street of education and the provision of public services, it's telling those providers to also listen as well as speak, to learn as well as teach. And it says, in effect, that citizens in a community, members of a community, are important leaders in every facet of what happens in the community. It's not only about doing something with the community, it's the community itself taking the lead, taking the initiative. And just to conclude, I know I've already pushed past. I was quite sure I'd limit myself to 20 minutes. But we're building on this. The community members are still working together. I noticed Participatory in the Department of Communications with us, and he as the PI, have just submitted a concept paper to the Michigan Health Endowment Fund to apply deliberative practices with our partners in Hope Village to develop programs in nutrition and physical fitness. Rather than, again, introducing the community to a program, it is empowering the program. And the people who learned how to lead deliberations over time will be team leaders and play a crucial role in leading deliberations, assuming we're funded. But the point in all of this is actually several-fold, is that when we didn't know what was going to happen once we got the $10,000 and began to work with Hope Village, what we ended up with was an act of democracy that turns out to have the potential to further transform the community and to provide a model for neighborhoods in Detroit, but also in locales, both locally and around the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So that concludes the brown bag portion of this event. Now we're going to move on to our Q&A. So if our wonderful host, if you would want to just stop sharing your screen, so it's just a little bit easier for us to see who has any questions. Yeah.
For me.
No, you take your time. And as he stops sharing his screen, just to let everyone know, if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand physically or use the raise your hand icon. Or you can unmute your mic or post your questions in the chat. So feel free, Q&A begins now.
Well, Marc, while other people think about the question, I want to congratulate your team for empowering the informants that participated in your program. I mean, over and over again, researchers underestimate the sophistication, or the social and civic, intellectual sophistication of the people they're interviewing. I remember way back when I had my National Science Foundation grant to do work on the east side of Detroit on sociolinguistic networking. The model I was following was a social network model that Leslie Milroy and others had invented for sociolinguistics. But in their interviews, they created something called a vernacular cultural index, and they would ask people questions, and then on the basis of what they considered to be reasonable choices, they went out and actually scored these, put scores on these on their charts and came up with numbers. But I didn't like that at all, because when I was doing my pilot study in the area, I realized that because you're poor, that doesn't mean that you're not intellectually sophisticated. And so I gave them the forms to fill out and the answers to the questions. And that turned out to be a rather good innovation for the model. And it was replicated in a number of places with good results. So empowering your informants is a good thing.
Yeah, I think that, thank you, Walter. The I think that the power of voice is incredible, and the opportunities to both speak and to be heard, as well as to listen, to be able to have a sense of control over your destiny is obviously a tremendous challenge, and by no means do I intend to minimize all of the broader systemic issues that people in the neighborhood face. But it is all too easy, I think, to throw up your hands and say, it's all powers beyond our control. We can't have any influence. And it's clear that, for example, the district member of the city council had a representative at one of our meetings. They were listening. They do talk to members of the community. And I think, in fact, that the going to the district method away from the member at large system for electing city council members, which was changed over in 2012, ultimately created a potentially more responsive city council. In all of this, I think that that this is applicable not only to a neighborhood, but I mentioned in my report to the Kettering Foundation about returning citizens, and we were invited to develop a dialogue and deliberation project with returning citizens to see if to emphasize the citizen part of the returning. And we're going to be undertaking it with colleagues in criminal justice, as well as in Richard Marbach and some of the existing teams. So I think that the potential is evident. I see in the chat room, John Gruda has asked how COVID has changed what happened. The COVID stopped our regular meetings and the in-person meetings, obviously, and we have had more occasional meetings, but in some ways the timing worked out well because the implementation really didn't require regular meetings. So what we often have are frequent consultations over email. Right now, the most recent one was 3 choices of graphics on health for the website, and so we're communicating obviously differently. One of the it's a disappointment to me that I believe that what the members of the community did was actually create a communication structure that could be applied to issues of vaccine hesitancy. And we know that there is considerable distrust widely about vaccines, but we also know that about the understandable distrust of African American community for the public health officials and for the healthcare community, because we all know a history that goes back way before the Tuskegee experiment, back to slavery, which I guess I did find a way to connect my very first research then to this project. But I believe that the idea of a community health worker who could be a contact point for the Detroit Health Department with the team ambassadors would be an ideal way to communicate availability and safety of vaccination. We actually did put a proposal together for a corporate foundation, but did not get funding. And yet I think that it gives you a sense about how, in some ways, I think of this as analogous to basic research. People, how much impact the community network will have on health, we're going to try to measure some of that. But the reality is that they've created a structure that could be replicated elsewhere, but can be used in other circumstances where we know community networks are essential. And we have it set up in a way that it won't require $10,000 every year to maintain it. That's a long answer to your question, John. Walter, you're muted.
I was just asking if there were any other questions.
Ah. If I could just say, Walter, if anyone has any specific questions about the project or any specific criticism that you're being too kind about, please share them with me directly. I'm delighted to talk further about it. And if I could mention that the center is supporting a program in early April of deliberation for college students. And I may ask Walter to use his remarkable network to spread the word. These are deliberations led by college students for college students. And so I want to thank everyone for listening in today. I apologize for occasionally rambling, but this is obviously a matter that I think offers tremendous opportunity for researchers, but especially for community members. Thank you.
Michael made a comment in the chat, and I think it's important that you notice that that it gave a name to what you're doing. It's called community-based participatory action research, and it's not only a new look for public health, but it's also a new look for research, the community empowerment and collective agency. Great work. So that's a good comment from Michael. I mean, Michael is a member of our advisory board, and so is Claudio Barani, who is also in the audience. So you had a high power audience here, and I have to be on my P's and Q's because they can fire me anytime.
That I'm confident is not going to happen.
All right, I'm glad that it's on the record so that Claudia would notice that. So I have at least one important advocate.
You anointed me with royalty, so I'll make the royal decision that the board do nothing but what it has always done, which is to support the great work that you and your staff have been doing all these many wonderful years.
Okay, Michael is. And Kennedy has something she says at the end of every talk, so go ahead, Kennedy.
Yes. First of all, Dr. Kruman, it's been a pleasure working with you. Thank you so much. We're so glad to have you back this year and to give you a platform to share this rich research. And as a small token of our gratitude, what we like to give to all of our speakers are 2 gifts, a journal and a mask with our Humanity Center logo on that we hope you wear with pride. We'll be connecting with you and all of our speakers to safely get these gifts to you because of COVID. But again, thank you so much. And it's a pleasure working with you. And just a plug from the Humanity Center, we have added an application for our call to speakers, which is in the chat. So if you feel compelled to, you can download the document and email it to Dr. Edwards if you would like to participate in our Brown Bag series for next school year. But thank you so much, and thank you to our audience. And I think we were able to facilitate some good discussion. And if you have any last words.
I do have last word, Kennedy. And I first of all, if you haven't presented at the Humanities Center Brown Bags, do so. Walter will give you an introduction that will make you blush for about a month. But I also wanted to mention that in response to what John Gruda's question, which is that the center is holding its annual conference online, and we're going to be doing it in June. I've invited, and we're collaborating with centers at the University of Aberdeen and the University of Edinburgh. And the theme of the conference is citizenship in pandemic times. And we've been fast-tracked by the editor of the journal Citizenship Studies to edit a special issue on citizenship in the pandemic. So this I will share with Kennedy and Walter after we shut down, so that in the hopes that some of you will submit proposals for the conference in June, which will, because of the time zone differences, we're going to be holding it in the first 2 full weeks of June at different times, coordinated so that people can be in panels from both India and the UK and the United States. Thank you again. And now I will stop.
Well, if that is all, again, thank you so much. That concludes our brown bag for today. And for, I believe, the rest of the month in April, we do have more brown bags Tuesday and Wednesday, and same time and same link. So thank you so much and have a wonderful day, everyone. And Dr. Kruman, yes, please send us that information so we can put it on our social media or push it out to our email list.
It's on the way.
Yes.
And we could stay for a little bit.
Yes, I'm gonna stay on a little bit longer, and so we can chat.
Okay, you don't need me though, do you?
No, you can go. You have done your job tremendously. Okay. We probably will call on you next year though to come back, but you're good for now. You're good.
Sounds so like a plan. Bye.
Bye. Everyone have a good one. All right. Hi, Dr. Edwards.